Chapter 1581. The figure flashed through the air like lightning, and a golden and silver streak of light suddenly appeared. It emerged right at the center of the ring-shaped formation formed by the 9 great demons, and it sliced right through 2 of their tails. The darkness energy being transmitted through the bodies of the 9 great demons was abruptly cut off, and right at this moment, Yuan and Tiandang arrived. His 9th soul ring lit up, and he thrust both fists forward to unleash his heaven-shattering titan strike. The dense yellow light around him suddenly turned transparent, and 2 angular bodies of light crashed toward the great demons with ultimate power. In the face of such a fearsome attack from a limit Douluo, the great demons didn't even have a chance to inspect what had happened to their tails. All they could do was defend with all their might. However, the severed connection couldn't be reconnected again in a short time, and as soon as they came into contact with those 2 formidable bodies of light, the great demons realized that they wouldn't be able to withstand the attack. They immediately split up into 2 groups of 4 and 5, then dove off to the side in unison. After unleashing that all-out attack, Yuan and Tiandang's face had also turned very pale, and his legs gave out from under him as he sat onto the ground. The great demons had exceptional resistance, so this attack wasn't enough to kill them, and it seemed as if not much had been achieved. But in reality, the formation that the great demons had always relied upon had been broken. A pair of massive hands, each of which was over 100 meters in diameter, descended from above, swaying the 2 groups of great demons even further away from one another. Yuan and Zenshin then stomped his right foot onto the ground, instantly increasing gravity by 100-fold, stripping the great demons of the opportunity to connect together again. Titan grip. A massive transparent hammer suddenly appeared in the 2 giant hands, and this was still the heaven-shattering Titan strike, but Yuan and Zenshin's version was far more powerful than the one that Yuan and Tiandang had unleashed. Arba was constantly keeping an eye on the entire battlefield, and he was struck by a sense of great urgency upon seeing this. The destruction of his demonic army was very unfortunate, but he could always recruit more subordinates once he returned to the demonic plane. However, these 9 great demons weren't expendable. In a sense, they were a part of him. There was no concept of reproduction on the demonic plane. Fission was the only way to pass down one's lineage. During this process, a demonic being would split up into 2 separate entities that were weaker than the original one, then cultivate to become more powerful before undergoing fission again. Of course, there were many restrictions to this type of fission, but it was the way through which powerful beings of the demonic plane passed down their heritage. All 9 of these great demons had been split from Arba's body. At his level, Arba was already standing at the very pinnacle of the demonic plane, so his method of fission was obviously different from that of normal demons. Only after he cultivated to the pinnacle of the demonic plane would he choose to undergo fission, temporarily sacrificing a small amount of his own power to create the most loyal great demon. He only chose to do this as there was no way to continue progressing after reaching the pinnacle of the plane, and it would take him a long time to reach that level again. The energy in the demonic plane was limited, and it was far inferior to the Douluo continent. As such, it would take Arba several centuries to produce a single one of these great demons. It could be said that these 9 great demons formed the basis of his power. When he aged to a certain extent and fission was no longer an option, he could even pass down his power to one of the great demons and resurrect himself through those great demons. Thus, these great demons were essentially 9 extra lives for him. All of the other demons could be replaced, but the death of each great demon equated to the death of one of his lives. Arba let loose a thunderous roar as a series of light patterns surfaced beneath his feet. All of a sudden, a terrifying storm of darkness erupted within a diameter of 10,000 meters, causing the entire space to warp violently. Look out, everyone! He's being backed into a corner. Erming yelled as a serious look appeared on his face. The desperate last-ditch retaliation from a quasi-god was definitely a very fearsome thing. The storm of darkness naturally enveloped the 9 great demons as well, and a series of black chains instantly connected them as Arba attempted to drag them back toward him. Yuan and Zenshin's heaven-shattering Titan strike had already arrived, and despite the resistance from the storm of darkness and the fact that Arba was injecting his own energy into the 9 great demons through the black chains, the great demons were still struggling to withstand the terrifying attack. 6 of the great demons had been slammed heavily into the ground and severely injured, while 3 of the great demons had already had their horns snapped. For great demons, their horns were the source of their powers, so having their horns snapped essentially meant that they were half dead. However, Arba still managed to forcibly drag the 9 great demons back to himself in the end. Under the cover of his storm of darkness, all of the great demons remained alive, although all of them had suffered injuries of varying degrees of severity. Rise up, storm of destruction. All of a sudden, 9 massive tornadoes emerged within the storm of darkness, and Arba suddenly expelled a mouthful of purple blood that vanished into the storm as a plume of blood mist. Right at this moment, a purplish golden speck of light appeared silently within the storm of destruction. The purplish golden figure was none other than Yuan and Yui, and she was currently also in the form of a great demon. As such, the storm of destruction posed no threat to her as it wouldn't harm a demonic being. Her eyes were currently filled with cold bloodlust, and bright purplish golden light radiated from her body as she pointed toward a certain direction. In reality, she had never been controlled by her own demonic bloodline. As soon as she became a tidal Douluo and awakened her demonic bloodline, the seed that Erming had planted in her body had also awakened. This was Erming's 3rd drop of blood essence, and it was cleverly concealed within Yuan and Yui's mind, allowing her to retain her sanity at the critical moment. However, in order to lure the demonic plane into a false sense of security, Yuan and Yui had allowed her actions to be controlled by them from afar. After that, she arrived in this barren place to open up the demonic passageway, and she had even been rewarded with the purest of royal demonic bloodlines. In reality, the powers of her and her mother originally stemmed from Arba. Through fission, he had created a seed that had been planted on the Douluo continent. Arba was hoping for this seed to grow and flourish on the Douluo continent as he knew that there was no longer any point in remaining in the demonic plane. In order to attain godhood, he had to find an alternative path, just as all of the limit Douluo on the Douluo continent were trying to do. As such, in her fallen angel form, Yuan and Yui was like a part of Arba, so she wouldn't be rejected by his attacks, thereby allowing her to strike at this critical juncture. Arba had drawn upon his own essential power to unleash this attack not just to protect the great demons, but also to escape at all costs. As long as he could get away, he would be able to replenish himself through devouring other living beings on the Douluo continent, and perhaps he could even reopen a passageway to the demonic plane. Unfortunately, he had forgotten about the seed he had planted in this plane. At this moment, this seed was acting as a beacon, notifying Erming and the others of Arba's location. Due to the fact that they shared the same bloodline, even Arba had completely failed to notice that there was someone nearby giving away his location. All of a sudden, a door of light appeared beside the purplish golden figure without any warning, and a massive azure claw emerged before tearing viciously into the storm of destruction. Arba let loose a howl of anguish, and the entire storm of destruction was instantly cut off. Chapter 1582. 3 fearsome corkscrews of power converged from 3 different directions. These were the same divine titan-fist attack, and they had all been unleashed by limit Douluos. The culminating destructive power exceeded that of even the previous metallic storm, and in that instant, it was as if the entire world were crumbling, and even the cities hundreds of kilometers away were trembling as if they were being struck by an earthquake. In the instant before the explosion erupted, the giant azure claw that had tore into the storm of destruction grabbed onto the purplish golden figure that was acting as a beacon and pulled her into the door of light, where they both abruptly vanished. In the face of the all-out attacks from 3 limit Douluo, the 9 severely wounded great demons were virtually instantly blown into smithereens by the terrifying explosion. Arba was barely able to defend himself, let alone worry about the 9 great demons. Never did he think that there would be a 4th limit Douluo level powerful being lurking in the shadows, and this one was very likely to be even more powerful than he was. It could be said that that claw strike was the final nail in the coffin that had snuffed out all of his hope. A massive crater that was several hundred meters deep and over 500 meters in diameter appeared on the ground. The surrounding energy storm tore through the entire space, and massive spatial rifts had appeared around the crater. The members of the Yuanan family had already retreated into the distance prior to this final eruption, and what little remained of the devilish army thought that they were finally getting some respite, but in the next instant, they had already been completely torn into shreds. At the center of the massive crater was Arba, who was barely able to remain on his feet. His right arm and dark demonic sword had completely disappeared, as had his dazzling fiery wings. Over 60% of all of his scales had been shattered, and purplish golden liquid was flowing out of his entire body, while his aura had become feeble to the extreme. The 9 great demons had been wiped out of existence, and their immense life energy was currently converging toward Tang Wulin in the air above. Impossible. I'm the almighty Arba. How could I possibly die here? It's all because of your dirty tricks. All of you deserve to die. A cold light flashed within Yuan and Zenshin's eyes as he said, Arba, have you forgotten how you opened the planar passageway over 10 years ago and killed over 30 members of our family? You demons have taken away many of my loved ones. It's time that you pay the price. Surrounded by 3 limit Douluos and debilitated by the Douluo continent's planar laws, there was no longer any chance for Arba to escape. What? I've never come to the human world before this. Wu Jie gave this opportunity to me. He said that he had once visited the human world, but the humans were more powerful than he imagined, and he said that only the mighty Arba could conquer this world. That bastard. He must have attained the ability of clairvoyance and foresaw all of this. It wasn't me. I wasn't the one who attacked your family. Yuan and Zenshin and Yuan and Tiandang both faltered slightly at the sight of Arba's vehement display. Thinking back, he did seem to be different from the leader of the demonic creatures that had last descended upon the Douluo continent. Back then, the leader's most powerful minions were the Cerberus, whereas it was great demons instead on this occasion. Arba's eyes were filled with rage and indignation. What the hell was this situation? He had come here to devour life energy, yet he had become a scapegoat for Wu Jie instead. Yuan and Zenshin and Yuan and Tiandang exchanged a glance. Yet just as the former was about to say something, Erming's cold voice suddenly rang out. Regardless of who you are, you came to the Douluo continent with the objective of bringing death and slaughter. You can curse Wu Jie for deceiving you after you die. Erming crashed down from the heavens as a giant yellow shooting star as he spoke, crashing into the center of the massive crater with an earth-shattering boom. Thus, Arba perished amid a howl of pain and indignation. Streaks of purplish black spread through the air in all directions, seemingly trying to get away. But right at this moment, a burst of enormous suction force erupted from up above alongside an authoritative dragon's roar. High up in the sky, Tang Wulin had already transformed into a massive golden dragon that was over 100 meters in length with the golden dragon spear hovering right in front of him. The energy of Arba and the 9 great demons were instantly drawn into his golden dragon spear, and scintillating golden light began to radiate from the giant golden dragon's body. All of a sudden, the massive golden dragon threw its head back and let loose an agonized roar as a cloud of reddish golden light enveloped its entire body. Yuan and Zenshin and Yuan and Tiandang both looked upward with perplexed expressions. They had no idea how Tang Wulin was able to absorb the life energy of the demonic army in the first place, and this situation was far beyond their realm of understanding. Erming also looked up into the sky with a grim expression. He didn't know what had happened, either, but Tang Wulin's spiritual fluctuations were far too violent, and this definitely wasn't a good thing. However, Tang Wulin's aura was currently filled with insanity, and he couldn't intervene. Tang Wulin would have to weather this storm on his own. In reality, Tang Wulin really was struggling to hold on. Too much life energy had flowed into his body, and he had to focus most of his attention on converting this energy, so he couldn't prevent the loosening of his golden dragon king seals. As such, in this critical juncture, he had adopted his martial soul true body form, trying to withstand the enormous influx of life energy through this form's superior physical resistance. However, his 14th golden dragon king seal had instantly shattered with the influx of life energy from the 9 great demons, and in that instant, Tang Wulin felt as if he had been transported into a cold and completely silent world. An indescribable sense of insanity and unyielding will surge into his mind, striking him with the uncontrollable urge to destroy everything. The terrifying power instantly filled every single corner of his body, forcing him to absorb it. Right at this moment, Arba was slain by Erming, and his life energy was also drawn into Tang Wulin's body through the golden dragon spear. Chapter 1583. The life energy of a quasi-god level demon monarch was simply far too massive. In particular, having lived for so long, Arba possessed far more life energy than a human quasi-god. The enormous influx of life energy instantly fused as one with the power from the 14th golden dragon king seal, flooding into every single corner of Tang Wulin's body and also surging toward the 15th seal. This was the biggest area of concern for Tang Wulin. All of the golden dragon king seals after the 10th one contained the will of the golden dragon king, and it was constantly waiting for an opportunity to take over control of Tang Wulin's body. Tang Wulin had faced this situation once before when he had saved his foster parents, and if Yuna hadn't appeared to save him, he would have most likely been possessed by the golden dragon king. Under these current circumstances, the issue was even more severe as the will of the golden dragon king was able to draw upon the life energy flowing into Tang Wulin's body to further strengthen itself. The golden dragon king's purest godly power had been restricted by Tang San and transformed into 18 seals, and each successive seal contained more power than the previous one. The power imbued within the 14th seal was already extremely formidable, and it was extremely difficult for Tang Wulin to contend with it. For the essence of the golden dragon king, the influx of Arba's life energy couldn't have come in a more timely fashion. By drawing up this life energy, it was instantly filled with boundless vitality, and it quickly began to conquer every single inch of Tang Wulin's body and mind. The ice god's bead hanging in front of Tang Wulin's chest was releasing a cold aura to try and assuage his emotional fluctuations, but it was all to no avail. The 15th golden dragon king seal was on the brink of being shattered, and if it were broken, Tang Wulin would have no chance to regain control over his own body. The golden dragon king would completely awaken with his body as its vessel, and the remaining seals would all be broken at once, bringing disaster upon the entire Douluo continent. Erming's expression became grimmer and grimmer as he sensed Tang Wulin's worsening condition, but he didn't know how to help him. The insane will threatening to erupt out of Tang Wulin's body struck even Erming with a sense of fear. Right at this moment, a burst of silver light appeared above Tang Wulin, and it immediately transformed into a massive silver dragon. The dragon's entire body was covered in oval scales, and it was slightly smaller than the golden dragon. It dove headfirst into the reddish golden light, then grabbed onto the golden dragon with its front claws before winding its own body tightly around the golden dragon's body. Bright silver light surged forth alongside rainbow light, forming a series of shackles that locked around the golden dragon's massive body, preventing the reddish golden light from spreading any further. The 2 giant dragons intertwined in midair, and the light glowing from the silver dragon became brighter and brighter as it gradually restricted the reddish golden light. However, right at this moment, the golden dragon let loose a thunderous roar, and all of its scales stood up on end as a burst of enormous power erupted out of its body, sending the silver dragon flying. At this point, Tang Wulin was completely unable to control his own body, and he could only look on in horror as all of his energy surged toward the 15th seal. On the previous occasion, Yuna had managed to calm him down in time, but this time, the will of the golden dragon king was clearly prepared. Furthermore, the life energy of Arba presented it with a perfect power source, so even Yuna was unable to control it. It's over. Such a massive flood of energy was definitely not something that the 15th golden dragon king seal could withstand. As soon as it was shattered, the golden dragon king essence within the seal would be released, and nothing would be able to stop the golden dragon king's reawakening. In this dire situation, the golden dragon king's body abruptly froze in midair. Everything seemed to have fallen still. This absolute stillness was brought about by the time reversal domain in its ultimate form, and this was clearly something that Tang Wulin was still incapable of. A beam of golden light surged out of the golden dragon king's forehead, transforming into a tall figure with a head of long blue hair. Golden halos proliferated from the trident in his hand, and this was none other than unpredictable storm. The unpredictable storm locked around the golden dragon king's massive body and also sealed its enormous power, temporarily paralyzing it. At the same time, the 15th seal in Tang Wulin's body was instantly bolstered to an unprecedented extent. The silver dragon king took advantage of this opportunity to wrap itself around the golden dragon king's body again, and its purple eyes were filled with astonishment as it cast its gaze toward the blue-haired figure. The tall figure gave her a meaningful look, and Yuna was struck by a burst of sharp pain in her mind as a spiritual seal was silently branded deep into her brain. At this moment, she was focusing all of her efforts on containing Tang Wulin's violent aura, so she didn't have the spare capacity to worry about what that spiritual seal was. The 2 giant golden dragons intertwined and tumbled through the air, then landed on the ground in the distance. The tall figure remained in midair, and he smiled as he gave Erming a nod of acknowledgement. In the next instant, his golden trident flew out of his grasp and plunged into the golden dragon king's glabella. The golden dragon king instantly stiffened, and its insane will was instantly scattered by the might of the trident. The enormous life energy finally converged before being transferred into the distance by the golden dragon spear. The blue-haired figure looked down at the golden dragon king on the ground below, and his eyes were filled with fatherly love and a reluctance to depart. In the next instant, the projection disintegrated into specks of light. All of this had taken place in a very short time, and Erming was completely rooted to the spot, while Yuan and Zenshin and Yuan and Tiandang had no idea what had even happened. All they could recall was that in the face of this blue-haired figure, both of them felt so tiny and insignificant. Both of them were already standing at the pinnacle of this world. What kind of being could possibly strike them with such an overwhelming sense of inferiority? Could it be that they had just witnessed a true god? As soon as this thought occurred to them, it led to the formation of an even more astonishing thought. Could it be that Tang Wulin was being protected by a god? Both of them were very well versed with the history of the Douluo continent, and thinking back to the appearance of the blue-haired figure and the golden trident that he was wielding, the same name instantly appeared in both of their minds, striking them with a sense of irrepressible excitement. It's him. It really is him. He's still alive. Ming was yelling like an excited child. After what he had just witnessed, he was finally able to completely confirm Tang Wulin's identity. Only in the hands of that familiar figure was the sea god's trident truly a paramount divine weapon, and only he could unleash unpredictable storm to such a powerful extent. An indescribable feeling welled up in Ming's heart, and a lump suddenly appeared in his throat. Hurry back to this world, my brother, Tang-san. Tang Wulin was currently in a very peculiar state. He could clearly sense and see everything taking place around him, but he was unable to do anything. At the same time, he could also see the changes that had taken place within his own body. His 15th seal had completely recovered, and it was even more resolute than it had been in the past. The Golden Dragon King essence within his body was slowly being absorbed, and the life energy of Arba and the 9 great demons was being transferred to the seed of life along with some of the Golden Dragon King's essence through his Golden Dragon Sphere. Chapter 1584. The Silver Dragon King was giving off abundant powers of laws, and her 7 elemental law was like a gentle medium that allowed Tang Wulin's body to absorb the Golden Dragon King essence from the 14th seal in a subtle manner. In reality, through his constant heavenly refinement, Tang Wulin had improved his physical resistance to the point that it wouldn't have been that difficult for him to withstand the power within the 14th seal, but it was still quite staggering to him just how much power was contained within that seal. Aside from the occasions where he had combined as one with Gu Yue and drawn upon Gu Yue's power to make a huge leap in his soul power, the Golden Dragon King essence had only ever improved his physical constitution and the purity of his Golden Dragon King bloodline. However, on this occasion, things seemed to be different. To Tang Wulin's surprise, both his dragon core and soul core now had golden dragon patterns all over their surfaces, as did his bones, muscles, and meridians. This was a fundamental change, not just an enhancement in his physical constitution. He had just experienced how formidable Arba's essential power had been, and now, the essential power of the Golden Dragon King had appeared within his body. This was truly a stunning turn of events. What was even more shocking to him was that his soul power was being drastically enhanced in the purest way. Inside his mind, his barely distinguishable second soul core had completely taken shape with the influx of Golden Dragon King essence, and his soul power had also reached rank 95, making him a hyper Douluo. This drastic improvement was completely unprecedented, almost like a soul master that had just attained their martial soul true body. After breaking the 14th Golden Dragon King seal, Tang Wulin was going to attain his 7th Golden Dragon King soul ring, and this latest soul ring would undoubtedly provide him with an ability that outstripped all of his past Golden Dragon King abilities. Despite this major enhancement, Tang Wulin wasn't happy at all as he had seen his own father for the second time. Tang-san had told him that he had planted 3 spiritual seals within his body that could save him on 3 occasions. The first time that Tang-san had appeared to save him was during the evolution of the Infernal Lightning Vine, and this was the second time. Regardless of how much more powerful he had become, the irreversible reality was that there was only one more chance for him to see his father unless he could track down the divine realm. Even though he had never truly been with his father before, he was constantly experiencing his father's love through old Tang and Tang-san's spiritual projections. From his father's expression, he could clearly see just how unwilling his father was to part with him, and he was just as reluctant to see him go. However, everything had happened and concluded far too quickly, and he had lost this second opportunity without even being able to talk to his own father. These 3 spiritual seals were the most precious things to Tang Wulin, not just for his father's protection, but also for the opportunity to see his father. The golden and silver light gradually began to subside, and Tang Wulin's energy was subsequently withdrawn. The massive Silver Dragon King slowly extricated itself from around his body, then tore open a spatial rift and departed after taking a glance in Ming's direction. This had been a resounding victory for the Yuan family. Not a single demon had managed to escape, and Arba and the 9 great demons had all been killed. This was also a fantastic situation for Shrek Academy as the supply of life energy had spurred on the seed of life to grow to around 50 meters tall. Unbeknownst to everyone, a series of patterns that resembled Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon King scales had appeared on the surface of the Tree of Life. These are the spoils of the battle, Yuan and Zenshin said as he handed a storage cell tool to Tang Wulin. 3 days had already passed since the battle against the demonic army, and an official investigator had arrived on the scene due to the massive commotion that the battle had caused. Of course, their investigation yielded no results. This was a very secluded area with an extremely low population density, and by the time the investigators arrived, all of the signs of battle had been cleaned up. The only conclusion that the investigators could draw was that several high-grade soul missiles had exploded here, and that required further investigation. But that investigation obviously wasn't going to extend to the Yuan family. The entire plan had been perfect. Aside from Ming, Yuan and Zenshin, and Yuan and Tiandang, Deming had also done his part from the myriad beast plane. Deming was even more powerful than Ming, and he was the true trump card. It was planned for him to contribute to this effort as prior to coming here. Even Tang Wulin and Ming hadn't predicted that a new limit Douluo in the form of Yuan and Tiandang would appear in the Yuan family. He had struck at the critical moment to erase any chance Arba had of escaping, and the combination of the 4 limit Douluo and the Tang sex high-grade soul missiles had simply been far too fearsome. Yuan and Yui's connection with the demonic plane was severed by Deming, and her fallen angel bloodline had undergone a second awakening due to the enhancements she had received from the purplish golden bloodline. The only issue was that Tang Wulin had almost perished due to the breaking of the 14th Golden Dragon King seal. This experience served as a stern warning to him, but looking back on the situation, he really had no choice. The supply of life energy was simply far too important for the seed of life, and he had already been informed of its growth by Shrek Academy. Even though the Tree of Life was still underwater, the rich life energy it was now releasing was slowly improving the conditions of the sea god's lake. During the past 3 days alone, over 10% of the lake's radiation had disappeared. At this rate, it would only take around another month for the radiation problem of the sea god's lake to be completely resolved, and once life returned to the sea god's lake, that would undoubtedly only serve to benefit the Tree of Life's growth. However, it was very apparent that even more life energy was required for the Tree of Life to grow to full maturity. The life energy from the entire demonic army had only allowed it to grow to 50 meters, and it would have to at least reach a height of over 100 meters just to emerge from the surface of the lake. The moment that the Tree of Life emerged from the sea god's lake would be the moment that Shrek Academy was truly revived. Unfortunately, following this battle, the demonic plane most likely wouldn't dare to try and invade the Douluo continent ever again. Deming was able to sever Yuan and Yui's connection with the demonic plane very easily as the demonic plane had already cut off its connection with the Douluo continent in fear of a counter-invasion. The Wu Jie that Arba had mentioned was clearly quite a wily customer. At the very least, he was more intelligent than Arba. Chapter 1585. What's that? Tang Wulin asked. There should have been nothing left behind in the wake of the soul missile explosions. Yuan and Zenshin smiled and replied, remember the formation that the 9 great demons adopted during the battle? Their connection relied heavily on their tails, and even after their bodies had been wiped out of existence by our attacks, their tails managed to remain intact. Senior Ming has already confirmed that these are special divine tools that can connect multiple living beings as one to share their energy, and that makes them perfect for your Shrek 7 monsters. We've kept 2 of them, and we're giving the remaining 7 to you. You contributed many precious soul missiles during the battle, so you deserve the majority of the spoils. A hint of elation appeared in Tang Wulin's eyes upon hearing this. These things will indeed be very useful to us. I'll take them back to the Tang sect and see if they can develop some replicas in the future. Yuan and Zenshin smiled and said, I was hoping you'd say that. In terms of technological research and development, no one can match the Tang sect. Ever since Yuan and Zenshin had made the decision to move the family to Shrek Academy, he had become a lot closer with Tang Wulin. In particular, after witnessing that godly projection, he was even more convinced that Tang Wulin was no ordinary man. Not only did he possess enormous power and potential, he also seemed to harbor many astonishing secrets. After all, the ultimate goal for all soul masters was to attain godhood, and he had been shown a glimmer of hope by the godly projection that had appeared to save Tang Wulin. We'll need a few more days to prepare for the trip. If you're in a hurry to go back, you can go on ahead. We'll take a bit longer to join you, but we should definitely be able to complete the move within a month. All right, Tang Wulin replied. Then I'll go on ahead and organize a place for your family to stay. Yuan and Zenshin smiled and said, we'll be in your care then. Sect Master Tang. After wiping out the demonic army, he had been in a very good mood, and he felt as if a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Tang Wulin nodded in response. I'll go back and make some preparations as well. Once you and your family arrive, I'll take care of your suits of of three-word battle armor first. The main objective for both himself and Shrek Academy was to consolidate. He had to consolidate the new powers he had just attained, while the Academy had to consolidate and prepare for the enrollment that would be taking place in less than 3 months. As a divine blacksmith, he was definitely vital to bolstering the overall power of the Academy. There was no lack of ninth-rank mecha makers in the Tang sect, but every organization was always looking for more blacksmiths, and there were only 2 divine blacksmiths in this entire world. Due to health reasons, Zenhua very rarely took on heavenly refinement jobs anymore, but Tang Wulin was right in his prime and didn't have to fear elemental tribulation. He was still not that confident in heavenly refinement when it came to alloys comprised of many types of metals, but his success rate was very high for singular metals or alloys comprised of 2 types of metals. On top of that, heavenly refinement was a very good cultivation method for him, so he was going to work hard on his forging when he got back, both to bolster Shrek Academy and the Yuanan family, as well as to further his own cultivation. Tang Wulin, Shishi, and Yuanan Yui departed first via soul train, while Emming stayed behind. He wanted to stay at the Yuanan family manor for a few more days to reminisce about his past lover. Due to the contributions he had made to the family, Yuanan Zenshin had officially announced his identity to everyone, and he was now being referred to as patriarch as opposed to senior. The return of their patriarch had immediately brought the family a quasi-god and a limit Douluo, and that was more than enough to convince everyone that he was the real deal. However, Emming had said that he wasn't going to return to Shrek Academy. Having already visited his descendants, he was going to return to the Myriad Beast Plain, and he would visit them at Shrek Academy in the future once he had some free time. What made Yuanan Zenshin very happy and Yuanan Tianchang feel a little awkward about it was that Emming had declared that the 2 brothers had to find wives to pass on their lineage. He was naturally eager to see his descendants flourish, particularly those with pure bloodlines and outstanding aptitude. After returning to Heaven Dou City, Tang Wulin dropped off the Great Demon Tales at the Tang Sect's research department, then returned to Shrek Academy with Shishi and Yuan and Yui. At this point, the area surrounding the Sea God's Lake was still a massive construction site, and the Federation could only turn a blind eye to the Academy's rebuilding. During the Joust for a Spouse event, Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect had displayed through their actions that they were not to be messed with, so everything had been quite calm at Shrek Academy during this recent period. However, the Federation still hadn't reversed its decision on declaring the Tang Sect a treasonous organization, so it was clear that the Spirit Pagoda was still being favored. The initial construction of the 3 main buildings was complete, and teaching supplies and facilities were being moved in. Everyone was pouring their heart and soul into the Academy's reconstruction, and there was more and more support coming from external sources. After all, Shrek Academy still had 2 limit Douluo. Which other academy on the Douluo continent could compare with this? Indeed, Shrek Academy had been struck by a massive disaster, but ironically, that disaster had increased everyone's confidence in the Academy. 2 Godslayer missiles had been dropped on the Academy, yet all of the students had survived, and only teachers had perished. How could one not respect such an academy? What concerns did a parent need to have sending their child to an academy where the teachers would protect the students with their own lives? Currently, over 2,000 prospective students had already registered for enrollment and were awaiting the commencement of the interviews. The only piece of bad news to Shrek Academy at the moment was the controversy surrounding Tang Wulin. Firstly, a narrative was being spun out of his defeat to give Yuna his identity as the Tang Sect Master. The Spirit Pagoda was currently heavily promoting the idea that the massive gap between the Tang Sect Master and the Silver Dragon Princess reflected the insurmountable gap between Shrek Academy and the Spirit Pagoda. Secondly, they were denouncing Tang Wulin as a shady conspirator who had targeted the Spirit Pagoda by ruining the Joust for a Spouse event. As of yet, Shrek Academy and the Tang Sect hadn't responded to those claims. Without eliciting a response, those claims had no point. A lot of meetings had taken place among the higher-ups of the Spirit Pagoda, but as for whether they were planning to target the Tang Sect and Shrek Academy, that was something that only they were aware of. However, what was very apparent was that these major powers were bound to clash again in the future. The Eagle faction still held the upper hand in the federal parliament, but many members of the Eagle faction were beginning to lean towards Shrek Academy, and they were headed by the Southern Legion. Due to all of these subtle changes that were taking place, the spotlight was once again placed on the rebuilding Shrek Academy. It was clear that the extent to which Shrek Academy was able to recover would heavily impact the political standings in the parliament. Shrek Academy had proven that its influence spread over to every single major power on the entire continent, and even the Battle God Hall had expressed support to the Academy to a certain extent. At the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, make sure to look after yourself. Don't be too hasty in your cultivation, Kyangu Dongfang said with a rather grim expression as he appraised his grandson's grueling training. After the Joust for a Spouse event, Kyangu's Hanting had recovered from his minor injuries very quickly, and after that, he had immediately returned to cultivation. In contrast to before, he was cultivating like a madman, and he only stopped every day after he was completely and utterly exhausted. I'm fine, grandfather. I'll work hard and surpass that bastard. Kyangu's Hanting panted. Kyangu Dongfang continued. There's something I want to ask you. What do you think of Naya? Kyangu's Hanting faltered slightly upon hearing this. Naya? What about her? Chapter 1586. Kyangu Dongfang's brows furrowed slightly as he said, don't you think she communicated a bit too much with Tang Wulin on the final day of the Joust for a Spouse event? I feel like there's something going on between them. Kyangu's Hanting faltered slightly upon hearing this. What do you mean, grandfather? Kyangu Dongfang replied, I'm wondering if Naya's heart really lies with you. Of course it does. Didn't she crush that bastard already? I had no idea she was that powerful. This is why I have to work even harder in my cultivation. If you ask me, Naya's powers are most likely close to the limit Douluo level. This is fantastic news for us. A serious look appeared on Kyangu Dongfang's face, and he continued, that's why you have to pay even more attention to your grasp on her. Have you really captured her heart? Does she really love you? Trust me when I say this. There was something different about the way she looked at Tang Wulin on that day. If there were nothing going on between them, that wouldn't have been her reaction. A disdainful look appeared on Kyangu's Hanting's face. That's just a completely unrequited love from him. Naya is so exceptional. It's only normal that she attracts others. Didn't you see how cold Naya was toward him? Kyangu Dongfang sighed. Foolish boy. It's exactly because of how cold and aloof Naya was that I'm concerned. Don't you understand? You're allowing yourself to be blinded to the truth. Kyangu's Hanting protested. I think you're the one that's blind to the truth. Naya has told me that I'm the only one she loves, and that she'll marry me once all this turmoil subsides. What's there to be worried about? Kyangu Dongfang asked. All right, then how far have you gone with Naya? Have you had physical relations with her yet? If you want to claim her heart, you have to claim her body first. My concerns would be erased once you've had physical relations with her. Having a child with her would be even better. Kyangu's Hanting blushed slightly upon hearing this. What are you saying, grandfather? Naya and I share a very pure relationship. We're only going to do the deed on the day of our marriage. You're an idiot. Kyangu Dongfang slapped a palm over his own forehead as he sighed. Have you been brainwashed by her? Nothing is truly yours until you claim it. Why don't you understand? Besides, how do you even know if Naya is as pure as you think? A surprised look appeared on Kyangu's Hanting's face. How could you say that about Naya? Grandfather, you weren't like this in the past. Kyangu Dongfang harumphed coldly. That's because Naya couldn't pose any threat back then. But she's different now. Her reputation has almost even exceeded my own, and the power she displayed is different from what we saw in the past. Truth be told, even your great-grandfather admits that her combat prowess is already comparable to that of a limit Douluo. I don't care what you think. Seal the deal with her as soon as you can. Understood? Kyangu's Hanting replied in a sheepish manner. I understand. There's nothing to be worried about. I'm confident that Naya would be willing to give herself to me as long as I ask. Really? Kyangu Dongfang asked in a skeptical manner. Kyangu's Hanting flared up with indignation. Don't you have at least that much confidence in me? I'll prove it to you. All right, that's the spirit. Keep working hard in your cultivation. Enrollment for Shrek Academy is about to begin. We have to take advantage of this opportunity to embarrass them just as they did to us during the Joust for a Spouse event. Kyangu's Hanting's eyes immediately lit up. What's the plan? Focus on taking down Naya. Kyangu Dongfang snapped. Don't divert your attention to anything else. You'll know when the time comes. Kyangu Dongfang departed, and for some reason, Kyangu's Hanting couldn't get his words out of his mind. Take down Naya. Seal the deal. These thoughts were like seeds that took root firmly in his mind, making him feel as if there were a kitten clawing at his heart. Naya was so beautiful, and her figure was absolutely flawless. Ever since he first met Yuna, all of Kyangu's Hanting's past lovers had lost all appeal to him. She was going to marry him eventually anyway, so there was surely no issue in sealing the deal and assuaging his grandfather's doubts. With that in mind, Kyangu's Hanting felt as if his heart had been set alight. He had been waiting for this day for far too long. He picked up his soul communicator and dialed that familiar number. Naya, where are you right now? Kyangu's Hanting asked in an urgent voice. I'm in my room. What's going on? Why do you sound like you're in such a rush? Gu Yuna asked. It's all right, I just really miss you. I'll go find you. Kaiangyu's Hanting replied as he repressed the arousing images that had begun to surface in his mind. Naya hesitated momentarily before replying. All right, come on over then. Wait for me. I'll go after I take a shower. Kaiangyu's Hanting said. After ending the call, he immediately took a shower and changed into a set of clean clothes. He then inspected himself in the mirror to ensure that he was presenting himself in the best possible way, then immediately headed to Gu Yuna's room. Gu Yuna had her own area in the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, not just her own room, but also a living area, cultivation area, etc. This was the same level of treatment that Kaiangyu's Hanting received. Gu Yuna was waiting for him in her living area, and his heart immediately melted at the sight of her. She was currently wearing a set of loose-fitting white robes, but even that couldn't conceal her stunning figure. Her long silver hair was draped down her back as a ponytail, and her face was slightly flushed with vitality, seemingly a result of her earlier cultivation. What's going on, Sancting? Gu Yuna asked with a smile. Kaiangyu's Hanting gulped nervously before taking a seat beside her. He had already prepared a long speech in his mind, but all of that suddenly completely slipped his mind at the sight of Gu Yuna. Gu Yuna was his goddess, and he couldn't bear to defile her, but the scorching flames in his heart were overriding his sense of reason. Naya, grandfather just came to me and said a lot of strange things. Kaiangyu's Hanting said. Oh. What did the chairman say? Gu Yuna asked. Kaiangyu's Hanting rubbed his hands together and replied, Grandfather is urging us to get married earlier. Gu Yuna countered, but the joust for a spouse event has only just ended, and technically, I'm supposed to be Land Forzy's girlfriend. If we get married now, the Spirit Pagoda's reputation will take a big hit. That Land Forzy is no ordinary character, either, so we can't take him lightly. Kaiangyu's Hanting hesitated momentarily before continuing. We don't necessarily have to get married, but Grandfather says that we should have a child first. He stole a nervous glance at Gu Yuna as he spoke. A cold light flashed through Gu Yuna's eyes, and she said, Are these your intentions or your grandfather's intentions? You promised me that you would respect me and refrain from physical relations prior to our marriage. I did say that. Please don't get angry, Naya. It's just that we've been together for so long, but I haven't even held your hand once. Can we be a little more intimate? I love you so much, Naya. I'm struggling to hold myself back. Chapter 1587. The more he said, the more he felt himself to be justified. In reality, even Kaiangyu Dongfang was unaware that his grandson hadn't even held Gu Yuna's hand before. Kaiangyu's Hanting was already reaching toward Gu Yuna's hand as he spoke, and his face had become quite flushed. Right at this moment, purple light suddenly glowed from Gu Yuna's eyes like a pair of purple vortexes, and Kaiangyu's Hanting instantly stiffened as if he had been immobilized. A hint of fierce killing intent flashed through Gu Yuna's eyes, and she had even raised her right hand. If she wanted to take Kaiangyu's Hanting's life, it would only take a simple gesture. You think you can touch me? No one else in this world can touch me aside from him. Gu Yuna's voice sounded as if it were coming from the iciest depths of hell, and Kaiangyu's Hanting remained completely still and unresponsive like a statue. I can't kill him now. Kaiangyu Dongfang has already begun to suspect me. I have to assuage those suspicions. Gu Yuna lowered her hand, and her expression eased slightly as she strode over to a nearby window, then cast her gaze toward Shrek Academy in the distance. She could only see a vast expanse of dense mist due to the effect of the anti-surveillance devices, but she could sense his presence there. What should I do? A series of complex thoughts surfaced in her mind. A crisp clang rang out, heralding another successful soul refinement. Tang Wulin nodded with a pleased expression. His soul refinement success rate was infinitely approaching 100%, and the quality was also improving day by day. Following his return, he had immediately begun focusing on his forging. Elder Long and Yali were overseeing the Shrek Academy rebuild, while he was constantly forging metals required for suits of high-grade battle armor. This was a massive workload, but it was a perfect form of cultivation, allowing him to grow accustomed to his powers, having broken the 14th Golden Dragon King seal and reached the Hyper Douluo level. There had always been an insurmountable gulf between Hyper Douluo and Tidal Douluos, and this resulted from a fundamental change. At the Hyper Douluo level, one would begin to sense the laws of the world and detect some things that existed beyond the realm of concrete reality. For example, one could begin to try and actively control space. Almost all limit Douluos had the ability to tear open space, and in order to be able to freely traverse through small planes, one had to at least be a Hyper Douluo. For example, in the past, Tang Wulin would have only been able to enter the Myriad Beast plane through a special avenue. However, at the Hyper Douluo level, all he required was a set of coordinates, and he would be able to traverse freely into the Myriad Beast plane as long as the plane of rulers, the Ming and Ming, didn't refuse him entry. After reaching this level, everything he had learned about the power of the plane in the past was seamlessly integrated, thereby deepening his understanding and allowing him to truly control it as a part of his own body. To put it in simpler terms, in the past, he was able to infuse into his attacks the plane of power of elemental tribulations that he had absorbed through the infernal lightning vine. This was a groundbreaking enhancement that had elevated his attacks to a whole new level. However, after reaching the Hyper Douluo level, Tang Wulin discovered that these powers of laws had naturally become a part of his own power, and that he was able to control a part of it with minute accuracy. In a sense, wielding the power of laws had become a way of battle that he was now able to adopt. In the past, he had only been able to borrow these powers of laws, but now, he could unleash his own tribulation lightning without the assistance of other soul skills. This was already a fundamental difference. Of course, it certainly wasn't the case that all Hyper Douluos were capable of this. In fact, generally speaking, most Hyper Douluos would be just beginning to develop a faint understanding of laws at this point. It was exactly because of this that both Tang Wulin's absorption of tribulation lightning and his usage of the power of laws had improved drastically in his forging. It was becoming clearer and clearer to him why Zhenhua had said that power was key for a divine blacksmith. Zhenhua's greatest limiting factor was that he was stuck at the Tidal Douluo level. Tang Wulin was confident that if Zhenhua could become a Hyper Douluo, then his heavenly refinement would be elevated to a whole new level. Of course, this was entirely implausible now. Zhenhua's foundation was too unstable, and his body had been severely taxed from his years of heavenly refinement. The only possible way for him to become a Hyper Douluo would be if he were provided the purest of blood essence by a patriarch like Ermine to the Yuan family. Currently, when attempting heavenly refinement on a single type of metal, Tang Wulin's success rate was over 90%. This was definitely unprecedented in the history of all divine blacksmiths. One had to realize that even the most ordinary of heavenly refined metals could be used to create forward battle armor. A forward battle armor master didn't necessarily have to be a limit Douluo. In reality, even Hyper Douluo could handle a suit of forward battle armor. Furthermore, forward battle armor crafted from a single type of heavenly refined metal would be more suitable for Hyper Douluo as it would be less taxing on their bodies. At the same time, Tang Wulin's heavenly refinement success rate for alloys comprised of less than 4 types of metals had risen to around 30%. This didn't sound very impressive, but it was enough to eclipse Zhenhua's record in his prime. Currently, Tang Wulin hadn't succeeded even once in heavenly refinement on an alloy comprised of over 4 types of metals. His suit of battle armor was comprised of 6 different types of metals, so completing heavenly refinement on it was quite a distant goal for him. Zhenhua had always told him that there were no shortcuts in heavenly refinement. Only by accumulating experience and sensing the minute changes in planar laws through constant heavenly refinement could one hope to improve. Tang Wulin firmly believed in this because he was constantly learning from every single heavenly refinement, regardless of whether he succeeded or failed. There weren't actually that many Hyper Douluos in Shrek Academy, but there was no lack of soul masters of that caliber at the Tang sect. However, only the 4 limit Douluos had suits of forward battle armor. Tang Wulin had extended that offer to the Yuanan family precisely because Shrek Academy was lacking in high-end teachers. They did indeed have 4 limit Douluo, but aside from them, there weren't actually many Tidal Douluos in the academy. Both Lan Muzi and Tang Yunmeng were Tidal Douluos, but they hadn't reached the Hyper Douluo level yet, while Tang Wulin and Yuan and Yui were at the Hyper Douluo level and Tidal Douluo level respectively. Aside from Tang Wulin, Wu Zhangkong was the only other Hyper Douluo in Shrek Academy. Tang Wulin's return had coincided with Wu Zhangkong's return with a batch of students that had just completed their training on the demonic island. A common trait among all students who had undergone the special training on the demonic island was that they were all very disoriented. Tang Wulin had experienced the training himself, so he knew just how terrifying it was. Furthermore, Wu Zhangkong had brought back a piece of good news. This piece of news was very beneficial to the development of the academy, but it wasn't necessarily good news for all of the students. Tang Wulin placed the piece of metal that he had just soul refined off to the side. For him, soul refinement was the equivalent of taking a break. Only heavenly refinement could be considered to be true cultivation. His most important mission at the moment was to produce enough heavenly refinement metals for 3 suits of forward battle armor. These suits of forward battle armor were for Yuan and Zenshin, Yuan and Tiandang, and Wu Zhangkong. Chapter 1588. Wu Zhangkong was already a hyper Douluo, so he would have no issues handling a suit of forward battle armor. Not only had his rate of progress not slowed down since he became a title Douluo, it had sped up instead, and that was why he had been able to become a hyper Douluo in such a short time. Yali told Tang Wulin that it was as if Wu Zhangkong had been reawakened by that explosion, and his thirst for vengeance had sparked a new flame in his once dead heart. Aside from the two limit Douluos of the academy, he was the only teacher that remained. All of the other teachers had sacrificed themselves for him and the students. What excuse did he have to continue wallowing in his own grief? Following that disaster, Wu Zhangkong had decided that his life now belonged to the academy rather than himself. His cultivation aptitude was very exceptional to begin with, and after making this decision, his progress had been rapid. It was imperative to complete the 3 suits of forward battle armor as quickly as possible, as this had something to do with the good news that Wu Zhangkong had brought back. The battle armor for the 2 limit Douluos and Wu Zhangkong naturally couldn't be crafted using just one type of metal. The goal that Tang Wulin had set for himself was to craft the suits of battle armor out of 4 metal alloys, which was the upper limit of his current capabilities. At his current success rate, it would take 3 months to complete all of the metals required for the 3 suits of battle armor. Lodging had already been organized for the Yuan family in the form of a new apartment built around a kilometer away from the main school buildings of the academy. The entire academy was ecstatic to see 2 more limit Douluos join their ranks, particularly because these 2 limit Douluos were absolutely trustworthy. In addition to that, the Yuan family also had 2 hyper Douluo and 5 title Douluo, which was an extremely formidable lineup anywhere on the continent. Most importantly, the entire family had chosen to ally itself with Shrek Academy. At the same time, all of the members of the Yuan family had immense potential for improvement. Once all of the powerful beings at the title Douluo or above among their ranks received their suits of high-grade battle armor, the entire family would be elevated to new heights. With the addition of the Yuan family, Shrek City was finally able to establish itself. After all, even the Spirit Pagoda didn't have that many limit Douluo among its ranks. Among the powerful beings of the Yuan family, only Yuan and Tiandang, Yuan and Tianshang, and 3 other title Douluos became teachers of the academy. The others, including Yuan and Zenshin, were already quite old and not suited to undertaking teaching responsibilities. Construction for the apartment allocated to the Yuan family had already commenced, and it had been named the Titan Spire. Judging by the current rate of progress, the members of the Yuan family would be able to move into it as soon as they arrived. After emerging from his forging workshop, Tang Wulin did some stretches to loosen his tight body. His forging workshop was situated on the roof of Shrek Academy's main school building, and it was replicating the heavenly platform, which took advantage of the high altitude to better connect with the elemental particles in the air. At the same time, it was very unlikely for elemental tribulations here to affect the outside world. The soul defense system here had been designed and constructed by experts from the Tang sect, and it was even better than the defense system at the heavenly platform. It was even able to disguise changes in light, so only sufficiently powerful soul masters would be able to vaguely sense the energy fluctuations during Tang Wulin's forging, but no one would know that there was a divine blacksmith there engaging in heavenly refinement. Tang Wulin had named his forging workshop the Heaven Refining Platform, and most of his time was spent there every day. Standing at the edge of the Heaven Refining Platform and peering into the distance, he could see that some vitality had already emerged within the sea god's lake. Perhaps this was only a feeling, but it was as if Tang Wulin could sense the presence of the Tree of Life deep under the sea god's lake. The first thing he did when he came back was to visit and communicate with the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life was extremely excited, having just received such a massive influx of life energy, and it told Tang Wulin that it was now capable of cleansing the entire sea god's lake. Even without any further injections of life energy, it would be able to create a complete ecosystem within the sea god's lake in 10 years. And when that time came, the sea god's lake would gradually be able to produce its own life energy. However, it would take an immeasurable amount of time for the Tree of Life to return to the former glory of the ancient golden tree. The best thing about the life energy from the demonic army was that it had come from an alternate plane. However, the Tree of Life also told Tang Wulin that due to how severely lacking the life energy on the Douluo continent plane was, it would require even more life energy to truly flourish, and the amount of life energy required made the life energy from the demonic army completely pale into insignificance. Hence, Tang Wulin had to continue to source more life energy. Tang Wulin had already planned to pay a visit to the Blood God Legion once everything settled in Shrek Academy and see if he could make a trip to the abyssal plane. He was far more powerful than he had been in the past, and he was confident that he would be able to ensure self-preservation. The only issue was that he could potentially be targeted by the abyssal plane upon entry. After a brief conversation, the Tree of Life fell into a deep slumber to digest the life energy and further improve the water quality in the sea god's lake. Everything was progressing in a positive direction. How are you? Do you? When will we be able to meet again? When will we be able to be together permanently? He cast his gaze toward the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, which wasn't very far away from the sea god's lake. From his side, he was able to clearly see the Spirit Pagoda headquarters, and he knew that she was there, but there was nothing he could do. This was the happiest day of Kyangyu's Hangting's life. He was unable to help himself in the end and used some forceful methods to take her for himself. He was so overcome by excitement that he couldn't even clearly remember the process. All he could remember was that he had taken her over and over again, and it was her first time, as evidenced by the blood she had shed. The sight of her blood had filled him with an indescribable sense of satisfaction, and all of his doubts had instantly been erased. She had been dragged by him into his room, but she hadn't refused him in the end. He sat up on his bed, and as he looked at the strands of silver hair lingering beside his pillow, he had never felt better in his life. His greatest wish had been fulfilled, and it was truly a wonderful feeling. But why was she gone? The only thing that could make this situation better was if he could revisit her blissful warmth this morning. He grabbed his soul communicator and dialed her number, but she didn't pick up from her end. What was she doing? Why wasn't she taking the call? Was she angry? Kyangyu's Hangting's heart jolted as this thought occurred to him. She had to be displeased with his forceful methods. After all, he had promised that he would only touch her after they got married. He was still floating on cloud 9, but what if she were angry with him? Chapter 1589. With that in mind, much of Kyangyu's Hangting's bliss and excitement was instantly replaced by anxiety. Having known Douluo for so many years, he was aware of just how uncompromising that she was. He had to go and apologize to her. With that in mind, Kyangyu's Hangting quickly rushed out of bed, took a shower, then put on what he perceived to be his best set of clothes before rushing to Douluo's living area again. However, he was greeted by a tightly shut metal gate with a very clear and forbidding red light. This was the universal sign for do not disturb in the Spirit Pagoda, and it was only to be used when conducting important research or going into seclusion for very important breakthroughs. Kyangyu's Hangting became even more uneasy at the sight of the red light, and he knew that all doorbells would be disabled when this red light was switched on. He hurriedly dialed Guyuna's number again and again in the hope of getting to speak to her, all to no avail. It was clear that she really was angry, and Kyangyu's Hangting was at a complete loss for what to do. Should he force his way in through the gate? With his lofty status in the Spirit Pagoda, he would naturally be able to do this, but would that make her even more angry? He dialed Guyuna's number over and over again in a blind panic, and finally, she picked up. Naya, please don't be mad at me. I'm really sorry for what I did, but I love you so much that I couldn't help myself. Can you please let me in? His panicked apology was greeted by complete silence from Guyuna. Nana, please say something. I promise you that I'll never do something like this again. I'm sorry. Finally, a response came from Guyuna. I hate you. After that, the call was ended, and when Kyangyu's Hangting tried to dial her number again, he was informed that she had turned off her soul communicator. You've really screwed me over, grandfather. Kyangyu's Hangting's heart was full of remorse, and all of his excitement had vanished. Meanwhile, Guyuna was standing beside her bed, casting her gaze toward the direction of the sea god's lake in the distance. A disdainful look appeared on her face as she murmured to herself, "You think you can touch me?" Splash. Tang Wulin dove into the lake, and he was instantly refreshed by the cool water around him. Ever since the growth spurt experienced by the Tree of Life after absorbing the life energy from the demonic plane, the entire sea god's lake had undergone a transformation. The deathly aura within it was no longer as pronounced, and the radiation was quickly receding. It wouldn't take long before the lake was filled with vitality again. Soul power was released through the soles of his feet, propelling him deeper toward the lake bed, and the deeper he went, the more clearly he was able to sense the aura of life energy radiating from down below. As the son of nature, he was extremely sensitive when it came to life energy, and the pure life energy here made him feel very comfortable. The outline of the Tree of Life was already within sight in the distance. This wasn't his first time here, but the sight of its thick and strong trunk still filled him with emotion. If it hadn't been for the ancient golden tree's protection, no one in Shrek Academy would have survived. The Tree of Life had always been protecting Shrek Academy and the continent, yet the greedy and destructive nature of humans had sapped away away its power, he had to do everything in his own power to revitalize it and restore vitality to nature, even at Tang Wulin's speed. It took Tang Wulin quite some time to traverse through the massive sea god's lake and arrive before the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life currently had a diameter of over 30 meters, and a series of thick strong tree roots could be seen plunging into the lake bed. As soon as Tang Wulin approached it, he was able to immediately detect extremely rich life energy fluctuations. Furthermore, he was struck by an intense sense of closeness, like a child in the presence of their grandmother. He couldn't help but spread open his arms and press his body against the Tree of Life. A series of branches wound themselves around him to reciprocate his embrace, and intimate feelings were transmitted to him by the Tree of Life. I'm very happy to see you again, my child. The Tree of Life communicated. Tang Wulin was able to communicate with it using his spiritual power, and he asked, I've come to visit you again. How are you? The Tree of Life replied, very well, my vitality has been awakened, and I can continue to flourish from here. The life energy that you provided me with was very good, but I'll need more life energy to continue growing. The main problem is that the life energy on the entire planet is constantly on the wane due to excessive exploitation of resources by humans. I'll require more life energy to return to my former state, then reciprocate life energy back to the continent, and that will require an enormous amount of energy. Tang Wulin said, I'll work on it. After the enrollment, I plan to make another trip to the abyssal passageway. For the Tree of Life, the best source of life energy came from alternate planes. The life energy on the Douluo continent could also replenish it, but in the process, life energy would be stripped away from that area. In contrast, absorbing life energy from other planes could directly increase the amount of life energy on the Douluo continent plane, and that was naturally the best course of action. As such, he had to pay the abyssal passageway a visit. If he could reap some rewards there, then he could make it a long-term source of life energy. The life energy from other planes is indeed the best, but your safety is more important. I've bestowed upon you that ability, but it's not guaranteed to keep you safe, so you have to be careful. All right, Tang Wulin replied in a respectful manner. Is there something you would like to discuss with me today? The Tree of Life asked. Tang Wulin nodded in response. I have a couple of favors I would like to ask from you. Firstly, I attained the approval of several immortal plants in the past, and they all became soul spirits of mine. However, they're concerned that they won't be able to pass on their lineage, so they gave me their seeds in the hope that they can one day be planted by your side. Would that be possible? The Tree of Life transmitted an elated emotional signal toward Tang Wulin, and replied, of course. I can sense their auras. You're referring to the beautiful silk tulip, chaotic element, immortal herb, delicate inferno apricot flower, octagonal mysterious ice grass, black jade divine bamboo, king gaze dew, and land dragon golden melon, right? They're all exceptional plants and can be said to be my children. Give me their seeds. With their help, I'll be able to create a more complete ecosystem here, and that would benefit the sea god's lake immensely. That's fantastic. Tang Wulin was ecstatic to hear this. Light flashed from his glabella, and 7 specks of light emerged. At the same time, the beautiful silk tulip appeared beside him amid a flash of pink light. The beautiful silk tulip crossed his arms in front of his chest, then extended a respectful bow toward the Tree of Life, and his body was trembling slightly from excitement. Seeds were a continuation of a plant's life, and to be able to have a seed planted next to the source of all life on the entire plane was a peerless honor. For plant-type soul beasts, the Tree of Life was their god. With the protection of the Tree of Life, their lineage would continue to be passed down so long as the plane still existed. The Tree of Life extended a branch to gently tap the top of the beautiful silk tulip's head, and a layer of faint green light instantly surged into his body. The beautiful silk tulip shuddered, and his slightly blurry and illusionary body immediately became a lot more substantial. The 7 seeds of different colors hovered before the Tree of Life, and the Tree of Life extended a branch to tap the seeds one after another. A layer of green light surfaced from each seed, and they plunged into the soil around the Tree of Life. Chapter 1590. Thank you, Patriarch, the beautiful silk tulip said in an emotional voice. Following my child was the best decision you could have made. When speaking to the beautiful silk tulip, the voice of the Tree of Life was filled with unmatched authority, rather than the benevolence it directed toward Tang Wulin. Yes, Patriarch, the beautiful silk tulip replied as he bowed with reverence. He then transformed into a ball of pink light and vanished back into Tang Wulin's body. Tang Wulin was also very happy as he had fulfilled his promise to the 7 immortal plants, and he felt like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The Tree of Life's voice turned gentle and benevolent again as it said, I'll make sure that these seeds flourish beside me. They'll make the sea god's lake even more resplendent in the future. You'll know what I mean when the time comes. Thank you. Tang Wulin was ecstatic to hear this. All of the 7 immortal plants stood at the pinnacle of the plant world, and they each had their own unique properties. If a portion of their power could fuse into the sea god's lake, it would definitely benefit Shrek Academy immensely. The Tree of Life said, There's no need to be so polite and formal. You are the child chosen by me. What's the other request you wanted to make? Tang Wulin replied, The other request is about the small plane that I spoke to you about in the past. Are you ready to create the small plane in the lake now? The Tree of Life said, I am, but I can only do this once. On top of that, you have to assess the power within it. I can only help you maintain it from the outside, and if anything goes wrong inside it, I'll reject it right away. I can't allow that destructive energy to affect the sea god's lake. Of course. Rest assured, we'll do our best to maintain its ecosystem, Tang Wulin said in an excited manner. This was going to be very important for Shrek Academy, and once it was done, the Academy would receive a massive boost, granting it something that it never had even in its heyday. All right, then come back once you're prepared. I've already chosen a good spot. It's in the western part of the sea god's lake. You'll see a vortex there soon, and once you're ready, we can begin there. With my protection, you won't have to worry about safety. The Tree of Life was speaking in a very placid yet confident manner. Even though it was far from reaching its former glory, it had regained some of its original abilities. Even in this severely weakened state, it was still the source of all life on the entire Douluo continent, and its powers were unimaginable to the average person. That's fantastic. Tang Wulin exclaimed in an ecstatic voice, on behalf of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, I thank you for protecting all of us for so many years. Go on now, the Tree of Life said in a gentle voice. After extending another respectful bow, Tang Wulin departed. Right after his departure, the surface of the Tree of Life warped slightly, and a rather faint face appeared. It cast its gaze toward the departing Tang Wulin, and it said with a warm smile, Foolish child, how could I not protect Shrek Academy and the Tang sect? After rising back to the shore, Tang Wulin expelled the moisture on his body, then returned excitedly to the main school building. The building had already completely taken shape now, and it perfectly recaptured the glory of the old main school building of the academy. The building was regal and refined, and it was impossible to tell that it had been constructed in only a few months. After walking through the main entrance, there was a spacious circular hall with many paths that led to different areas of the building. Directly up ahead was a giant soul screen that was over 500 inches in size, and some important information would be broadcast on it from time to time. Tang Wulin made his way along the screen and went upstairs to the teacher's office on the top floor. He knocked on the door of the innermost office, and a voice rang out inside. Come in. Tang Wulin opened the door and was greeted by the sight of a spacious office with an antiquated design, completely matching the style of the old Shrek Academy. Wu Zhangkong rose to his feet behind the sturdy timber desk before extending a slight bow toward Tang Wulin. Pavilion Master. Tang Wulin hurriedly said, Teacher Wu, I've already said this before. You're my teacher. You shouldn't bow to me. Wu Zhangkong countered. These are the rules of the academy. You are the sea god's pavilion master, so you deserve this treatment. You'd be putting me in a difficult spot if you don't accept this gesture. Tang Wulin was quite resigned to hear this. Wu Zhangkong was the one who had truly led him into the world of soul masters, so he had nothing but genuine respect for him. A rare hint of amusement surfaced in Wu Zhangkong's eyes at the sight of Tang Wulin's resigned expression, and he said, You look like you have some good news. Tang Wulin was far more mature and steadfast than he had been in the past, so it was quite rare to see him display this degree of excitement. Tang Wulin nodded in response. I do. The Tree of Life has already agreed to our request and found a suitable place for us. When should we begin? Wu Zhangkong's eyes lit up upon hearing this. That's great. I've completed the preparations on my end as well. They'll still be able to last over 2 more months, so we have more than enough time. Let's do this right away. It would be best to get everything settled while they're still in good condition. Tang Wulin nodded in response. All right, I'll invite everyone to wait for you at the sea god's lake. Wu Zhangkong also nodded in agreement, and Tang Wulin could see that his hands had already balled up into tight fists. Wu Zhangkong was currently the principal of the outer court, and Tang Wulin knew just how much pressure he was facing. During the disaster, all of the other teachers had sacrificed themselves for him and the students. It was the weight of their sacrifices that was spurring him on to work like a madman, mulling over every single minute detail of the academy's reconstruction while also working extremely hard in his own cultivation. In his current schedule, the only time he had to rest was during his cultivation. The occasional strand of silver could already be seen in his long blue hair, and even though his appearance hadn't changed, he seemed to be more jaded and weathered. However, his rate of progression in his cultivation cultivation was quite astounding, and even with Tang Wulin's spirit domain realm spiritual power, he was unable to ascertain Wu Zhangkong's exact cultivation rank. 2 hours later, a series of figures appeared side by side in front of the sea god's lake, and all of them bowed toward the center of the lake in unison. Tang Wulin stood at the very forefront of the group, and the lineup behind him was truly astonishing. Before them at Douluo's, Light Dark Douluo Long Yeyu, Holy Spirit Douluo Yali, Amorous Douluo Zhangxin, and Heartless Douluo Cao Daja were all present. Aside from them, there were also the 2 Limit Douluo, Yuan and Zenshin, and Yuan and Tiandang, as well as the 2 Hyper Douluos, Wu Zhangkong, and Tang Wulin. Long Yeyu turned to Yuan and Zenshin with a smile, and said, "Thank you for agreeing to do this. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read."